Okay, let's discuss the Locard exchange principle. Back in 1929, Edmond Locard was the director of the laboratories, the criminalistics laboratories in France, and he established a tenet, a fundamental tenet of forensic science known as the Locard exchange principle. And what that principle states is when two objects come in contact with one another, there's a transfer of materials. Those are the materials that we look for from an investigative standpoint. We use it to both include and exclude suspects or an individual suspect. When we collect this, what we need to do is find a way to store this evidence correctly so we can get it back to the laboratory where we can analyze it further. What we need to do is learn how to make these, which are referred to as druggist folds or bindles. Historically, these were used when a person would go to an apothecary or a doctor and they would render their service. They would be given medicine, a lot of times in powder form. These were folds of paper that allowed them to secure that small powder back to their homes where they would take it appropriately. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to use that to our advantage. We're going to go ahead and create this druggist fold to place our evidence in. Now, as an educator, remember, this is considered drug paraphernalia. I would not let these out of my classroom. I would issue a coin envelope to my students, have them make their bindles, store them in there until we need them. And before we can start our first lab on the Locard exchange principle, we're going to teach you how to make a bindle. Okay, let's go ahead and make our first bindle. Now, this is what we refer to as glassine weighing paper. It does not have to be glassine weighing paper. It can be butcher paper, notebook paper, whatever you have available. And this size bindle that we're making is appropriate for hairs, fibers, glass on a small scale, paint transfers, scrapings, and so forth. And what we do initially is lay the paper down, and when we lay the paper down, we're going to make a slightly offset fold. So when I look at this paper, we'll notice that it's not flush end to end. Once I have this done, I'm going to place this paper back down and I'm going to fold the same fashion from the top down. And by doing this, what we've been able to do is now have an offset. There's going to be a larger end and there's going to be a smaller end. At that point, we're going to fold this neatly into threes, and we have created our bindle. Now, the way we make this bindle so it's safe to transport evidence, you'll notice the larger section has a small flap, and what we are going to do is take our smaller section and we're going to gently guide this into it. So when we are done, we have our bindle. This is a shirt that was worn today from Time Warner Cable, Connect a Million Minds, which is a wonderful program to support education. If you should get an opportunity, I would definitely hit that website. They're really trying to help us out. Now, concerning the Locard exchange principle, because this shirt was worn, there has been contact between the environment, also the person who wore it. And what we're going to do is begin to examine this shirt in a systematic format to see if we can collect any type of trace evidence. To do this, you will need a type of a flashlight, and the technique we're going to be using is oblique lighting, where we take this flashlight at a low angle and we begin to look at the shirt to examine if anything stands out. The whole shirt does need to be examined both inside and out, special attention to the front and also the neckline. But already what I see by looking here is I have what appears to be a hair. So what I'm going to do at this point, we have a piece of information that I need to collect. I will record this on a diagram. Once I've recorded this, I will take one of my bindles that we made previously. I'm going to open that bindle up, take a pair of forceps, collect that sample, place it inside the bindle, carefully folding the bindle back up. We would slip this back in, and then what I do is I have my students record the day, the time, what they perceive this to be. This appears to be a hair, and then store this piece of information that we can use in subsequent labs. Remember that when we have these type of situations, you may want to have some pre-done shirts if you have it available. You may want to have some pre-done carpet samples, and make sure that students work both inside and out, and you should be able to collect enough information and enough trace evidence to use subsequent labs. All right, you just ran your first Locard exchange principle. Hope you had a wonderful experience with that. A couple of things I may point out. Some of the students will forget to bring in a shirt, or they'll bring in one straight out of the package. You might want to go down and contact your local carpet supplier. That's what I did, and I went ahead and had samples of carpet pre-cut, and I also had pre-evidence put on there. They were seated per se. If you desire, this is a really good Genesis lab for where you, as an educator, can take those materials that have been kept, whether it's hairs or fibers, to use for subsequent labs. But regardless, it should give your students the first opportunity or first lab using the Locard exchange principle to be applied to forensic science.